Hi there. This is Frater IAC, and this video is done by request. Um, I had one person who asked, well, you said you group these characteristics on the black mirror, especially according to the seven deadly sins, and then the white mirror according to the virtues. Okay, so that's what this is. Ways to group the traits on each mirror for faster or more efficient progress, but still complete progress. So now you don't want to be like this guy. You know, look at what Bardon says down here in gold on the bottom right of the slide. Um, Students that are especially gifted, he says, have discovered hundreds of failings in the finest nuances. Man, when I when I was making my soul mirror, that did not cheer me up. I'm like, oh, hundreds of failings. Okay. And I actually did. I had over 150, 160, I don't know. I had a bunch of them and more surfaced as I went, so I had a bunch. Um, and I tried to do it line by line, but I couldn't because it would have taken too long. And if you try to do it line by line, you're going to be like this guy. Look at him. He's grown cobwebs. You know, um, he's trying to wade through this thing a line at a time. That's not the way to go here. There's a better way to do it, but you need to realize right from the get-go this isn't something where you're going to have immediate gratification. It isn't, okay? Initiation into Hermetics, and especially the soul mirror steps 1 and 2, require a sustained effort over an extended period of time. So no matter how efficient you are, steps 1 and 2 are going to take, 8, 9 months, maybe a year, because you got to really work it. You have to do it as perfectly as you can, right? So let's look at the most effective strategy. Obviously, it's grouping them. The esoteric author Virgil actually suggested that uh, when he was more active online and also in his books. Um, so, and I was asked to address the seven deadly sins. Since I'm Christian, I'm quite familiar with the Judeo-Christian wisdom literature. But there are other rubrics that you can use. Whatever faith you are. Barton said anybody from any religion can successfully practice Hermeticism and can become a Hermetic initiate. So whatever your faith is, it doesn't matter. For Christianity, seven deadly sins. In Judaism, you're looking at the Yetzer Hara. Uh, in Islam, you're looking at the destructive sins. Taoism has obstacles. Buddhism has kleshas. Um, Hinduism has shadrupus, and I probably butchered the pronunciation. Forgive me if I did, because I am not nearly as familiar with these religions as I am with my own. Although I have read the Bhagavad Gita and some other um, wisdom literature from other faiths. Um, and then, of course, you can go with the elements, and that's Hermeticism. So now, here's what the vices look like for each of these religions. And, Christianity has the seven deadly sins, pride, wrath, avarice, envy, lust, gluttony, and sloth. Sloth can also mean distraction, by the way, but there's one missing. Think about what that might be as we go through the others. Um, And in the Yetzer Hara, you have impurity, uncleanness, you have hatred, you have being a stumbling block, purposely blocking the progress of the people on some project. Why? You're being a stumbling block. Stone is being stiff necked, being stubborn. I'm not going to do it. I'm just not going to do it no matter what. I know you guys are right, but I told you I wasn't going to do it, and I'm not. I mean, that's what kind of what that looks like. Evil nature. Islam has a concept of shirk, and that is essentially idolatry, where I mean the basic tenet of Islam is there is no God but Allah, and Jesus was his prophet, and Muhammad was his prophet, and other prophets have existed over time, but you don't want to conflate any other power with Allah because there's only one. That's the idea behind shirk. Sorcery, unjust killing, usury, stealing from orphans, fleeing battle. And fleeing battle, I am not nearly as familiar with Islam as I am with Christianity and Judaism, but it seems to me that fleeing battle can also be giving up on a spiritual discipline that you're trying to achieve. You flee the battle because, one of the greatest battles you're ever going to face is mastering what's inside you. Okay? That's why this is an inner path. The initiation into Hermetics is first it's an inner path, then it is externalized. But you got to do the internal stuff first. Hinduism has lust, anger, greed, infatuation, arrogance, envy. Buddhism has egoism, attachment, which is, I want this. Like, imagine that little attic deal, with its little claws. I'm attached to this. I'm attached to my resentments. I'm attached to my guilt. I'm attached to the things I hope for in the future. I'm attached, I'm attached, I'm attached. And aversion is, I don't want that. I don't want that. I'm scared I'm going to suffer. I'm scared I'm going to be deprived of something. I don't like spiders. I mean, that's aversion. And then ignorance and fear of death. And then, of course, Taoism has desire, ego, knowledge, restlessness, fear. And of course, the Hermeticism has the four elements. But the thing that was missing from the seven deadly sins, when I did this and I made my soul mirrors, okay, I discovered that there were certain things that I had going that could not be attributed to one of these deadly sins. There is an eighth, and that eighth is fear. You have to be free from both fear and attachment in order to advance spiritually to the point where you can become one with divine providence. You can unify or connect with the Godhead. That's what this is. So here's the vices on the black mirror. So you could use any of these rubrics, whatever you feel most comfortable with, because you aren't me, I'm not you. We're all different. So figure out the best way, the way that works best for you. Now, here's some of the virtues. And virtues are a little bit more uh, prolific. There's more of them than there are the deadly sins. On the Christian virtues, the big three, I didn't list the big three on this column, but they are obedience, poverty, obedience, and chastity. Those are the big three, and all of these other virtues can be grouped in one way or another under those big three. Okay, that's fine. But let's be a little more granular here, which is what I was trying to do in this table. We have faith, hope, charity, we have prudence, justice, courage, temperance, humility. You get the idea, right? Kindness, joy, peace. And then, Judaism, Islam, Hindu, Buddhist, they all have a list of virtues. And then, of course, Hermeticism has fire, water, air, and earth. So there you have it. So we can look at this, but remember, when you get back, well, let's just look at these. Oh, let's just look at these. Here's a sample list. Um, these aren't necessarily mine, although I have done many of these things um, in my younger days. And that's something to remember too about when you're watching these videos. I'm in my 60s. I'm past retirement age. I mean, I was in there slugging in the corporate culture. Man, I know how to make a career, and I did it, you know, but I'm at the tail end of that now. You may be in it, right in the thick of it, because you may be younger than I am, and that's fine. Because what I found is that values tend to change over time. I was working with this young woman one time in vocational guidance and everything. I did all these, career interest inventories with her, and everything said music, art. Join a band, and I was all ready to, work with her in terms of a career in the arts. And I said, well, what do you want to do? I want to be a computer programmer. And I was like, okay, uh, tell me why. What's causing you to want that instead of music? And she said, well, I love music. I do. I would love to be in a band and I would love to do that for a living, but I got a kid. I want to live in a certain neighborhood. I want to drive a certain kind of car. And to do that, I got to have a decent job and I need to have health care. And I'm figuring computer programming is going to do the trick for me. Wow. So that's an illustration of what that looks like, you know? I mean, depending on where you are in life, because you got to take care of business. You're never going to be getting away from the laws of Saturn. You got to crawl out of bed and pay the bills. You have to take care of your house. You have to take care of yourself. You have to have money to buy food and clothing and transportation and so on. You got to do that. That's reality. So, what we're talking about here is spiritual ascent. But you got to take care of business, and you always have to do that no matter where you are on this advancement. Okay? So, anyway, here's a bunch of stuff. I had to be a big shot at the party. That's from the Billy Joel song. You had to be a big shot, didn't you? You had to open up your mouth. They were all impressed with your Halston dress. I love that, you know. But I've actually done that at parties. So, that's about pride. That's about trying to impress people. Well, la di da. Let me just tell you, because I'm going to tell you from my own perspective, I am not all that in a bag of chips. I am definitely human. I'm just a guy, and so you are too. You're human. And so, yeah, these are things that live in us. Like I said earlier, you're never going to completely get rid of them, okay? What you're doing here with these deadly sins is you are working to gain control over them because they're still going to be in you. And like pride, okay? Obviously, humility is the virtue that goes with it. But wait a minute. What if you are a genuinely good human being? Can you take some legitimate pride in who you are and how you've conducted your life? Sure, you can. That's called self-respect. You act like somebody's got some self-respect. You clean your house, you take care of business. I mean, that's what that looks like. So, yelling at a customer service representative. My kids, who are millennials, call that being a Karen. And gosh, I am guilty of that. Um, like many of you probably, I have gotten all mad at some poor, hapless customer service representative, which, they're just like me. I mean, they're just doing their job. But that's wrath. And in the case of the customer service rep, that is a lack of patience. You want your problem solved now, now, now. And here in the United States, 70% of our economy is based on consumption. So it's like we have been carefully coached. We want it and we want it now. Even if we have to spend money we don't have on whatever it is that we don't really need, we've got to have it now. That's endemic to our culture, and that is a fire element issue. I loaded up my plate with more than I needed. That's gluttony. Obviously, its corresponding virtue is temperance, but what if you load up your work plate with more than you can handle? The colloquialism is bite off more than you can chew. What if you have a boundary issue and are not able to say no when somebody comes and says, "Well, I'm going to need you to blah, blah, blah." Well, you got all this other stuff on your plate. How are you going to handle that? Are you just going to acquiesce? Okay, that's a whole different thing. That isn't going to be gluttony. That's going to be poor boundaries, the ability to say no. You know, I would put that, gosh, where would I put that? I would put that under envy or pride. It could be vainglory. I'm I need to impress my boss. And so no matter how impossible the workload they foist off on me, I'm gonna nod and smile and say yes and work around the clock. Why? To impress them? Think that through. I found a wallet on the ground, took the money and threw it in the dumpster. Not the wallet, or not the money, but the wallet. I mean, in my younger days, in my teens, this was something that I did that I have since atoned for. And that's avarice, just plain old greed. I'm broke. I need wow, there's a wallet, you know. And then the virtue that goes with that is chastity, which in this case means personal purity. Because you know what I should have done? We all know what I should have done. I should have left that money in the wallet. I should have looked that guy up because his ID was in there. I should have looked that guy up and given that wallet back to him complete with the money that was in it, but I didn't. And in my defense, I was maybe 14, 15 years old at the time. So that kind of gives you an idea. I'm in my 60s now. I would never do that now, but I did when I was younger. Quietly derailing somebody's promotion at work, sabotaging your competitors, clawing your way up the corporate ladder. Hey, I've done it. We've all done it, depending on your level of education and the kind of job you have. You know, you're you can look at your workmates as being mates and you're actually all working together for a common goal, or you can look at them as competitors and stand around in a circle stabbing each other in the back, which is a very toxic culture. A friend of mine asked my help and I refused. There's a post on my Facebook feed and I criticized it. I'm a hoarder. I'm addicted to cigarettes. That's gluttony. Abstinence is the virtue. too many one-night stands, lust, chastity. And chastity, in this case, takes the form, instead of objectivizing the body of the gender that you're attracted to, you know, instead of making them an object of attraction, you know, you're going to respect them for who they are. See, that's a different way of thinking about things. I showed off in front of a new employee. I scared passengers in my car by driving recklessly over a mountain pass, and I enjoyed their fear. Ah, that's envy. You were showing off. And the opposite is kindness, because you don't need to be doing that. So you get the idea. I left my watch in the locker at the gym and was too shy to go back and get it. I'll tell you what, my mom is one of my heroes because mother never, never in a million years ever let me off the hook to do something like that. One time there was this kid, Marty, that lived next door to me, and he had a flea circus, which was basically a shoebox, and he apparently had captured a flea, but it escaped, and so he so he charged me a quarter to look in this empty box, and when I got home, there was Mom standing in the door, and she wouldn't let me in. She said, "Where's your quarter? Show it to me." And I didn't have it. I was like, "Ooh, I didn't have it," and she said, "Okay, that's your quarter. You got ripped off. Go get it back." She never let me off the hook for taking care of business, sticking up for myself. That's one of the things I will always love her for, because I don't give up like that. But don't you either. And look at what's going on. I mean, this is just a very limited list, but here's kind of how to do it. But again, look at identify the deadly sin, and fear can be part of this too. But identify the deadly sin, but identify the correct virtue based on what's driving the show for that sin showing up on the ground in the way you live, right? Okay, so enough of that. Oh my goodness. Look at that library. Wow. And I think this is an AI representation, but it's meant to be the library at Trinity College in Dublin. Oh my gosh. How would you like to go in there for like a couple of days? You could spend yeah, I this would just be fantastic. And you could go and you could explore those stacks. Oh my gosh. Wow. Because this is a knowledge business. It is. And, later in your ascent, um, when you're doing all these exercises, you're working with the letters, you're connecting with your holy guardian angel, you're connecting with the Godhead, you're going to receive a lot of insights from the divine realm in addition to the books that you are reading and so on. But right now, you're going to read books. And see, this guy here on the right-hand side of the slide is Hermes Trismegistus, uh, otherwise known as Thoth or Hermes or Mercury, you know. But he could have been an avatar in ancient Egypt, and he was probably a very advanced being who had completely mastered his physical body, his astral body, the emotions, the emotional core, and then the mental body, Hermes thrice great. So his higher self is in charge. That's what this is. That's what you're trying to do. So now, a couple of books. I put Invest in Yourself because this is a knowledge business. You have to know some things in order to complete your ascent and truly become a Hermetic initiate. You can't just sit there and wish for it to happen. You're going to have to read, you're going to have to put in a sustained effort over a period of time, an extended period of time. That's what this is. So, because anything worth having is worth working for, being in there slugging, trying to make it happen, you know? And this is absolutely no exception. Um, this is the great work. If anything, that applies more to the great work. So anyway, this Rebecca Conondike DeYoung is amazing. Glittering Vices is brilliant. She is a professor emerita at Calvin University in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I could not ascertain from her biography what specific denomination of Christianity she is, if she is. I suspect she is. But, Glittering Vices is brilliant because it talks about each of the deadly sins and what they look like on the ground. Just an outstanding book. And my second favorite book is written by Graham Tomlin. He was the Bishop of Kensington until 2022 with the Anglican Church or Church of England. And he wrote a book called The Seven Deadly Sins: How to Overcome Life's Most Toxic Habits. Again, an excellent book. Notice the uh, notice the apple is represented in each of these. But that said, these are excellent books, and they will help you if you want to use the seven deadly sins as the rubric for grouping the characteristics on your soul mirror. These are great places to start. And then here are some other books I just want to mention because books, some of these Christian mystics, Thomas Aquinas, Thomas A. Kempis, St. Teresa of Avila, Meister Eckhart, St. Augustine, the Confessions, St. Benedict. These people knew more about human psychology than today's psychologists. In a lot of ways, they're just amazing. They were amazing. And so, the Christian mystics are really good to read. And there's a whole bunch of them. But these are just a few of the books. I really love Humility by Thomas A. Kempis. I mean, it's just amazing. John Bunyan he was not even a monk. He wasn't a monastic, he wasn't a priest. He was just a working schmuck. And he had this like vision, and he wrote this book called Pilgrim's Progress, which is about somebody that's going from complete ignorance and following that spiritual quality path to the kingdom, the realm of heaven. It's very good. Um, and this is a good revision by this Vermilion. It is a readable modern day version. But I remember I read this back when I was a teenager, and it was great. And then Virgil, Built Different, excellent book. Virgil is great. He talks about, and he really pounds on prayer, which I'm a big believer in scientific prayer. Virgil pounds on that, and he talks about the soul mirrors. And, I would not have made it through steps 1 and 2 without Virgil. So, Built Different, very good book. And he also wrote The Elemental Equilibrium, which is excellent. And then here you have the Tanya Robinson and Falcon Books published Equipoise, which is excellent. It's from the Bardon community. And last but not least, we certainly have Yogananda, Second Coming of Christ, and we have Thich Nhat Hanh, Anger, Wisdom for Cooling the Flames. These are both outstanding books. The Second Coming of Christ is over 2,000 pages long, okay? But is it worth reading? Oh yeah. You're going to know so much more on the path of spiritual quality than you ever dreamed of after you read Yogananda. Very, very good. So anyway, enough of those. And then, of course, Rebecca Conondike DeYoung wrote Vainglory after Glittering Vices. And vainglory is about today's influencers on social media. Oh, and how many times have you tried to please somebody by saying something or posting something that isn't really genuine, but you think people will like? That's what she's talking about here with vainglory. This feverish desire to please other people for what? Okay, so enough of that. And I want to talk a little bit about using the elements, if you want to use the elements. Now, these are actually two separate books. This is an aid for introspection, which is absolutely outstanding. And on the next slide, we're going to do an exercise using materials in that book. But there's another book called The Golden Book of Wisdom, and this actually was also published by Czech Hermetics, same as the Aid to Introspection. These are rather expensive volumes, um, but and you can decide for yourself after we do the exercise, in the next slide, um, whether they're worth having. I highly recommend them. Yeah, I mean, if you want to do this, spare no expense. This is why they call it the great work. This is the most magnificent path you will ever experience in your life. This is the most amazing journey that you can ever take because it is a reaching up to achieve your highest potential and your greatest power as a human being. What could possibly be more important than that? Seriously. I mean, that's it. So, invest in yourself. So, anyway, we're going to do this next slide has an exercise that I developed based on the content, again, of Aid to Introspection and Aid for Introspection by Joseph Drabeck, who was a student of Franz Bardon. They were friends. So, anyway, I want to do just a quick thought experiment with all of you, okay? Because I want to kind of get you in tune with how these energies feel inside you, all right? So we're going to start with perseverance, which is a plus pole or positive uh, attribute of the fire element. It's stick-to-itiveness. Uh, you know, Winston Churchill once said there's starters and there's stickers. And people who have perseverance are stickers. They'll stick to it until they get it done. Think about a time when you had a big project, you had to do something and you didn't necessarily want to do it, but you had to do it. It was before you. And so you did it. You threw yourself into it and you persevered until it was done. Um, think about how that felt. Just sit back for a minute and remember that time in your life and think about how it felt when you achieved that which you persevered to accomplish. That's what fire feels like in its best sense. Isn't that fun? And now think about a time, and we've all done it. Think about a time when you bullied somebody, when you rolled over somebody, like in a meeting. Think about when you did that. And now sit back quietly and listen to your conscience. How did that make you feel? And for me, it makes me feel soiled. It makes me feel weak. I mean, whenever, and I haven't bullied anybody to my knowledge for a long time. I have a very powerful personality, but I don't engage in bullying, and I really didn't when I was a child either. But in the beginning of my career, I did engage in it. Don't do that. Pay attention to your inner feelings. You were given a holy guardian angel for a reason. And that holy guardian angel, the HGA, that you're supposed to, gain knowledge and conversation with and connect with in step 9, because that's an initiation into Hermetics step 9 exercise, is when you use a sidereal pendulum to connect with your holy guardian angel and learn to understand and respect how to access messages from that being. Okay, listen to your conscience, because that's what that is. How did that make you feel last time you bullied somebody? Last time you humiliated somebody? How did that make you feel at the end? Okay, enough of that. Now, let's go on to air. And by the way, these pictures are wonderful. Aren't they wonderful little pictures of these elemental creatures? I love these pictures. They came courtesy of Google Gemini artificial intelligence. And so I generated these using AI. Yay! Generative AI. Isn't that fun? I feel very tech savvy now. Anyway, enough of that. Think about a time when we're concerning ourselves now with water as an element, the plus pole of water, one of the main attributes, because remember, water is about feelings. Fire is about the electrical projective male creative force. Water is about the female receptive force. They both live within us. So think about a time when something worked out where the issue was in doubt. Okay. Think about that. And it worked out, and now you're sitting back having accomplished your goal, and you feel so grateful. An attitude of gratitude. And in fact, scientific studies have shown that an attitude of gratitude actually has health benefits for your physical body and certainly your mental health. Um, but now, on the minus pole of water, cruelty. Think about all the times in your life you have been cruel to an insect, an animal, a plant, a person. Think about all the times you've been cruel, and now quiet yourself and feel that feeling. How did that make you feel being cruel? Again, with me, it's always a real remorse. I'm really sorry I was mean to fill in the blank, you know. I mean, this is regret, you know. And that's how the element of water feels in the negative pole. Not the whole element, but just this one example. With air, planning on the plus pole, think about a time when you had a complex project you had to do, whether it was painting your house or cooking up a dinner for guests that were coming over to your house or a big project of work, whatever. You planned it out. You got the ducks in a row, you got your materials, and you executed perfectly. And what you planned came to fruition. Think about how well that felt, that you were able to plan that from front to back. That's the plus pole of the air element. And of course, that's joy. Fire is volition, will, okay? Air is joy, water is love. And of course, fire back again to enlightenment. Fire is a light. And light can actually bleed over into the air element too, but we'll get into that much later. But I mean, you have that, and then Earth, of course, is the pillar of silence. And so, but I want to talk about this air element, this negative air pole, pleasing. Take a minute, and I'll tell you a little story. There was this guy when I was a kid. His name was S. His name started with S, so we'll call him S. And he and I were friends. I mean, we were like 11, okay? So we're kids, all right? And we're friends. After school, gosh, because junior high school sucked. It was a horrible experience. I hated junior high school because it was just like toxic and bullying and ugh, because I was one of those people that didn't quite fit in. So, I was often on the business end of that bullying. But anyway, S and I were out on this giant gravel place that they forced us to go and stand after lunch. And it was like a field of some sort. And so we just kind of stood around until they let us back in the building. Like I say, horrible experience. It's like Pink Floyd, Welcome to the Machine. But one time, some people started bullying S. They were popular kids. They were bigger than us. They were bullies. And so they started bullying S, and I denied him, just like Peter denied Jesus after they arrested him. I denied S. Oh my gosh. I have regretted that so much. You know, I felt so soiled because it broke our friendship. He never wanted to see me again because I betrayed him. For what? To please a bunch of bullies that would have never accepted me in their group at all anyway. Don't be like I was. You know, think about how you felt after you did that, because I know many of you have done similar things. Think about how that made you feel. That's what the negative pole of the air element feels like. Okay. And then Earth, think of a time when you promised something to somebody, and even though it inconvenienced you, you came through, you delivered. That's the plus pole of the Earth element, or part of it. And then think about a time when you gave in to an addiction. Well, I've decided to fast today. Oh, wait a minute. I feel a hunger pang. Oh my gosh, I have ice cream in the freezer. Well, no, I'm fasting. Oh, yeah, but the ice cream, and you give in. Think about a time when you gave in to an impulse when you intended something else. That's the bad side or the negative pole of the earth element. And again, just a final reminder here, you're not ever going to just completely get rid of these things because they live in you. They're part of you. They're universal energies. What you're doing is taking control of them so they do not control you. That's it. That's the whole process of the soul mirror step 1 and 2. So anyway, enough of that. In the next video, I want to cover the magical schooling of the physical body and begin exploring how to work the soul mirror using 3 of the big 5, which are essentially the magic of washing, the magic of eating and drinking, which Christians call the Eucharist, and the magic of breathing. But you should also remember the thought exercises also contribute to elemental equilibrium. Because if you're mindful, if you're living in the present and not living out in the future or through remorse and guilt from the past, you're much closer to equilibrium, you know? So be mindful. And if you're focusing your thought, focus your thought on love. Focus your thought on joy. And we did that in an exercise in that video. That is a huge tool to help you come back to equilibrium with that particular element. That's kind of how to do it, right? So that's what we're going to do. So until next time, farewell and goodbye.